just over 2 weeks where we've had daily shows to welcome and to highlight this event. Day 2 is what we see today. I'm Gouwa Solomon. Shukran so much for joining us. And stay with us on Channel 347 Hilaal TV. If you're following us on the World Wide Web, please do continue. Tell your family and friends they can do so on hilaal.tv. So we will be chatting to our anchor presenter who will be taking us through the next couple of hours as various countries and guest countries as well talk to us about the declaration, the various points of concern, and address matters here in Africa and the world. So to wrap up yesterday of day 1 is Firaz Batal, who is with me and will be joining us as inside our news media rooms. So Firaz, tell us as a wrap what happened yesterday.
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullah. I think how, we've been having this discussion. There was a surprise that the actual declaration had happened so early, and a declaration amongst many nations. Now, early this morning, we just learned that Argentina has decided not to honor the declaration, and I think for the viewers out there, they'll maybe have an understanding as to the reason. It's because Javier Milei, the president of Argentina, is very close with you. To bear in mind that a couple of weeks ago, this is the very same president in Washington who gave a bailout to Argentina. So listen, why bite the hand that feeds you? And I guess that is where we are right now. So it's two nations that of course have decided that they're not going to be part of this declaration. There's obviously questions whether this is unanimous or unanimous in terms of just one nation probably not being part of this. So I guess this is where we are right now, and I think the consensus is that in terms of a global world agreement, there's still so much of fragmentations, and for me that is quite concerning. So even if we have the global north really delivering us all these pledges, unfortunately when you have nations who do not want to be part of this discussion, unfortunately, we are already heading into what seems to be quite a dark road.
To break you, but to understand that the reason for a summit like this is to bring peace and consensus and understanding, and yet we're starting off at this.
Well, I mean, like I said, when we heard the declaration, we thought, okay, by the United States, every other nation has, unfortunately, Argentina, who are represented here by its foreign affairs minister, has quite frankly gotten obviously the word from Buenos Aires to say, no, you will not do this declaration. And again, like I mentioned, because of its ties with the United States. So I don't know, key part of a Latin American country who of course is going through climate challenges. Even though there's a bailout, Argentina still has financial challenges that are currently happening at the moment. So I don't know how this will end, but I think by the looks of it, I think the two major countries from the global north have been and gave its pledge and gave its declaration, United Kingdom and France. They of course occupy 2 permanent seats within the UN Security Council and have veto powers. So as much as on the flip coin we see a bit of a negative with the US and Argentina, let's take the positive and look at the United Kingdom. We are willing to go ahead and actually honor this declaration. So there's a positive to that. And the other part to this is the United States of America. Are we seeing them slowly start to isolate itself from the world? And a lot of United States analysts could potentially push for the United States to be completely isolated. So it's going to be interesting to see how this unfolds, given that the G20 goes to Miami next year.
Yeah. So it has been a lot of talk about the US and understanding that they are meant to be the official recipient to hosting here, the only country not represented amongst all the other countries being here, just number 1. So the official handover was also announced yesterday as to apparently not happening here and delayed, being at DIRCO offices. Just elaborate on that.
Okay, so DIRCO is going to be doing the official handover, which is very rare. It's unprecedented that you're not seeing the actual president of the current G20 heading over to the next G20. We saw it last year. Lula da Silva obviously was the to hand over the baton to President Ramaphosa. That is not happening this year. It would have been great, and probably if we had the previous administration, despite its tons of flaws, I'm talking about the administration of Joe Biden. Joe Biden would have probably been here, but Joe Biden, he's no more there. It's now US President Donald Trump who's of course made these outlandish remarks, these false, that there's a white genocide that is happening in South Africa, which is complete false, and that's the reason why. So we are where we are, and the United States administration is not here. We thought J.D. Vance was going to come. Unfortunately, J.D. Vance has not come. We thought Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, he hasn't come. So it's interesting how this is going to happen. It's going to go from Turco's offices. How, when, we're yet to find out. But again, unprecedented. And I think for global harmony, for global democracy, for a sense of understanding where we are, is not good news.
The people of South Africa voiced their concerns, their questions yesterday, and we saw that through some of the messages which we are encouraging them to continue. Let's talk about that, because that question was raised in the media briefing. Alhamdulillah, I got to ask the Minister of Mr. Lamola about that. And there's this happens after G20. What was the take from the analysts, from people you spoke to about the people of South Africa?
Well, I think we're dealing with one major problem. I mean, just on Friday we had, the gender-based violence march, and gender-based violence needs to be addressed. It needs to be brought to the table. It needs to be understood. It needs to be, fought. Now, I know we've got the gender-based violence bill, which was obviously launched last year by President Ramaphosa in Women's Month, but are we seeing any action from the criminal prosecution side happening? So as much as it's a nice piece of paper and, it's not officially declared as a pandemic, what we're understanding, it's a state of emergency. So the thing we need to ask ourselves is how are we protecting the women of our country? And unfortunately, not much is being done, because there's, if you go and lay a gender-based violence charge at the police station, either they ignore you or it gets written in the book, but nothing gets done. So that for me is a huge, huge concern. I mean, the rural areas of this country, we heard the sad story of a boy falling into a pit toilet in the Eastern Cape. Again, why are we still having these discussions around pit toilets? Why are we still having discussions around bridges which are flooded when there are heavy rains? So government, and this is a supposed mandate now, that they need to go out and need to help these communities that are affected. So it's all lovely to have this G20, but when this is over, which ends today, what is the way forward in helping South Africa? And political parties need to take stock, because there's that local government elections next year, and if they're not delivering for the residents, then they are going to be punished in the polls. So there has to be this consensus of how it's going to go forward, especially with regards to this. It's great. South Africa is doing great things internationally, playing this quote-unquote honest broker when it comes to Ukraine and Russia, a leader in the African continent. They need to sort their domestic affairs out, because that is the most important aspect.
And then lastly, take us through the day for day 2 in the studio and behind the scenes to our viewers.
Yeah, of course, we're going to be looking to talk to Imraan Buccus. Our lead analyst is going to be with us, and first we're running through to the afternoon, and I think around 1 o'clock, if I stand to be corrected. With these events, it generally never starts on time. We're hoping President Ramaphosa will give his final speech as he obviously declares the G20 summit concluded.
Shukran so much, Faraz. Over to you in the studio, and I'll cross over to you and your guest. And definitely people can watch out to great conversations and uplifting South Africa in a big way, but also behind the scenes of what the heads of state are saying. We'll chat to you later, inshallah.
Ameen. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
There we go. Firdaus Patel off to the inside studio within this major briefing house, warehouse, I would say. Everybody from Media International to our local media is here. So what an impressive stance to be part of this G20 broadcast, and stay with us as we continue to inform you. And yes, there has been questions around what is G20? What is it about? Who are G20? And understanding broadcasts like this, listening to leaders of state when they have been given only 3 minutes to say something, or understanding the guest speakers who haven't. South Africa has asked the various countries within Africa to be part of it, to come together, and the voice that we heard often was that no one will be left alone. So we heard everything from Mexico, from Spain, Italy, even Namibia showcased some of their grievances, what they need, and a big call out was for debt relief. Why are the African countries being charged up to 8 times more, even 9 times more than some of the wealthy countries? And yes, this might be something that a conversation cannot be had maybe around your dinner table, but understand, when we are with our kids, when we are with our grandparents, this is something that they did not see. And this is something that we might not see again in our lifetime here in South Africa. Because yes, although South Africa is hosting the G20, we might not see it of Africa. We would like to encourage other African countries to, organize and be host of summits of this sort. But it is just by the will of the Almighty that this has happened here in South Africa. So when you do meet, and it's something that we spoke about yesterday, I chatted to an Argentine radio presenter, and she of course saw my scarf, my hijab, and she checked whether we're Muslim, and not even knowing whether there are South Africans, Muslims in South Africa. And yet the representative within tourism mentioned that one of the biggest masjids in South Africa is here in Johannesburg. So when we see these delegates, people from around the world, and understand that they are coming to us, South Africa is welcoming the world. Let's show them that yes, there is no genocide happening here within the farmers, the white farmers, that we as Africans need to represent. Right now we'll in the studio where he will be inviting and speaking to various guests, and of course his lead analyst, Dr. Buccus. And we encourage you to send through your questions, to ask possibly our representatives of government your answers to be answered. So please do continue sending them in, and I'll be chatting to some of the representatives here at G20 as well, so keep following us and stay tuned. I'm Gouwa Solomon, and over to Firdaus for now.
Shukran so much for that, Gouwa, for introducing us here on day 2 of the G20 Leaders Summit. So let me welcome our first guest for today. And of course, Gauteng tourism has played such a huge role. And the irony is that I've lived in this province my whole life, and there are gems in this province. And sometimes a lot of us, especially residents of this province, don't really get to experience that. And I think it's important to, as much as we love the coast or going to Kruger National Park, to actually understand what this province can offer. So let me welcome the Chief Marketing Officer of Gauteng Tourism, Baba Ghanediwe. Baba, absolute pleasure having you on. Thank you so much for joining us.
Quite excited, and Gauteng is not just welcoming the world. We are actually the playfield and the playground. We are giving our warm invitation to the world to stay over for a festive summer, for the sunny skies and the blue skies, warm weather, and not go back to a cold Europe or Americas.
Yeah, and that's the thing about Gauteng, is that we don't have the ocean. I mean, if you want to see wildlife, you need to go to one of the lion parks, and that whether it's in south of Joburg and those various places. But at a time like this, when you see Gauteng really coming to the party, is especially when there's huge political events like what we're seeing today. How has Gauteng really facilitated this bringing in of international guests, heads of state, for such an important event like this?
No, 40 minutes after landing from OR Tambo International or Lanseria, you can actually drive and be at Gauteng's Big Five Game Reserve, Dinokeng Game Reserve,
Yes.
just on the east of the capital city, Tshwane.
Yeah.
So we might not have the mountains, we might not have the oceans, but certainly we have close to 16 million now, because we no longer also have gold underground. We now have gold on top.
Yes.
So those are our golden champion hosts. They have played a critical part in ensuring that we roll out not just the red carpet, but the golden carpet for thousands and thousands of our delegates, our hosted media, accompanying persons. We even designed tailored program for the spouses of the heads of states, the first ladies and the first men. While the heads of states are engaging in bilaterals, they have been taken to some of our areas, hot air balloon over the Mahalis, boat cruises in the Vaal river, playing golf in our splendid golf courses. And the Australian finance minister couldn't wait to go to the Dinokeng for safari. But if you also want to touch base with your common human ancestry, the cradle of humankind becomes that place. We have the biggest mall in the sub-Saharan Africa, right here.
The Mall of Africa. Yeah.
You know, not the Mall of Africa, but also the biggest mosque in the sub-Saharan Africa is found here in Johannesburg. Turkish match, in here. So these are some of the gems. These are some of the gems that characterize what we have to offer in the province. But most importantly, we're anticipating that as this summit coincides with the start of the festive summer in South Africa, delegates will stay over. They will be able to enjoy Christmas shopping. They will be able to enjoy some of our splendid world-class events. We have seen a record increase in the arrivals, especially from the Middle East. 58% just between January September this year. 7.8 million international arrivals into South Africa, and Gauteng account to just 52% of them.
Baba, one final question before we wrap it up. The legacy of Gauteng in terms of hosting events. We had BRICS Summit 2 years ago, and of course this year the G20 Summit. I mean, what will this leave in terms of a legacy for Gauteng and its tourism?
The legacy once means that we have world-class machinery that is able to be deployed instantly when we host quality global events. You know, we are hosting the 2027 Cricket World Cup.
Yes, yeah.
You know, we are bidding for the
there's three stadiums, or two stadiums.
Two stadiums already, and the Benoni one, which used to play the Protea women, is also part of that.
Yeah.
You know, we're also bidding for the Formula One in Kyalami. So this bodes well for us to really push forward with the Johannesburg bid for Formula One because of our capabilities. So the legacy is more global events that create more jobs for SMMEs, those that are providing marquees, those are providing sound, shuttle service, translation service, broadcast services. They will have more work to do because of the quality global events. But most importantly, we now have a global window, an advert of our good quality, despite the narrative that has been perpetuated out there of all the negatives. We have changed that tremendously.
Baba, absolute pleasure having you, and thank you so much for joining us here.
My pleasure.
That is Baba Gouwa, the Chief Marketing Officer of Gauteng Tourism. Do stay tuned to Mzansi Welcomes the World on day 2 of the G20 Leaders Summit on Hilaal TV. We'll have more for you after this break. Welcome back to Mzansi Welcomes the World. This is day 2 of the G20 Leaders Summit coming to you from Nasrec in Johannesburg. My name is Firas Patel and we thank you again for staying with us here. And joining me, of course, he's been with me throughout yesterday, our analyst, international relations expert, Dr. Imraan Buccus. Dr. Buccus, Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Here we are, final day after 360 presidency. It comes to this moment.
Walaikum salam. Thanks for us. Yeah, I mean, there's an electric atmosphere. I think almost euphoric.
Yeah.
Well, at least while we're here, and I'm assuming, likely to be on that, like that on the outside, that people are feeling that. I think people are feeling proud, celebrating, and just proud to be South African. I think even as you walk around here and people talk about the summit, there's a positive sense, not only on the ground, but also I think amongst the leaders who signed Ramaphosa. The fact that we had that declaration so early, is an indication that many leaders may have been upset at the arrogance of the US, if you like, that it was an insult to South Africa that they opted not to be here. And held its own, not agreeing to, the charge d'affaires or the deputy ambassador receiving the baton. So I think, we're feeling good about it. And the very fact that we've hosted up to now a really successful G20.
I was going to say, really a successful G20 Leaders Summit. When you see the discussions going around in terms of various other media across the international community, they've really had praise for South Africa. There's an interesting piece in the City Press by Mondli Makanya who says that Ramaphosa has done exceptionally well despite the bullying from Donald Trump. I know you and I had this conversation yesterday, Dr. Buccus, but the fact that what we have seen today, or this weekend in terms of South Africa telling the United States, no, and they're going to agree to this declaration. And you are welcome to be part of this, because listening to Vincent Magwenya yesterday, who said diplomatic channels remain open between Pretoria and Washington. We are ready to play ball. And yet till now, it just seems as if the United States of America does not want to play ball. And this piece being developed by Mondli Makanya speaks to just that. South Africa have really played this diplomatic game as effective as possible.
Yeah, the diplomatic game, and really sophisticated. The decorum with which Ramaphosa has held his leadership role, despite the pressure, despite the machinations of the US. And we saw the complete opposite from the US. Tantrums, trying to dictate, acting as though they lead the G20, which they don't. I heard, yesterday that there was even an attempt for Starmer to accept the leadership and for the US to take 2027. And that didn't pan out for them.
Okay, so this is something new. I didn't know about this, Dr. Buccus. So there was a possibility that the United Kingdom could have taken over.
Yeah, I think the US threw that at them and said, well, you are there, why don't you take it and we'll do it the year after. I think the UK in so many ways has aligned to the South African position. Of course, there are huge differences, but Starmer's been of South Africa's policy positions, of a whole range of things. We see them talking about further investment in South Africa in a really big way. So I think Starmer would have also realized that doing that would have scarred that relationship and would really have defied protocol at the G20. I think this is possibly the first time ever that it's not being handed over to a head of state. And it's very low level, DIRCO office. So I'm told DIRCO office that even needs to be renovated, hopefully, that the US has to take the baton. Not only for South Africa, but for the global South. Of course, we had Argentina, who was trying to throw a spanner in the works, and we know Argentina carries the the mandate in so many ways of not only the US but in some ways of Israel.
I think for context, sorry for cutting you there, Javier Milei had visited Jerusalem, right? He has declared his unwavering support for Benjamin Netanyahu. This Javier Milei character, I mean, just a few weeks ago, he got a bailout from US President Donald Trump, which, listen, it's quite clear, don't bite the hand that feeds you.
Yeah, no, absolutely, right? That's the nature of politics. But even prior to the bailout, you know, remember he pulled out of BRICS, or Argentina pulled out of BRICS. They were initially meant to be part of it. But there was this not only symbolic, but this real attempt or real, decision that they made not to align with the global south. So we've seen that. And, it also speaks to broader politics, I think. The recent politics that we've seen is you either go extreme right or extreme or left. We've seen that in Argentina, we've seen that in Ireland, we've seen that in other countries, that it's either right or left, and be, not the part that political leaders are traversing or not the choice of the people. Yeah, so Argentina was a lone voice, which was great for the global south, and certainly the other countries did not rally behind them. There's such a huge difference between Brazil and Argentina, two Latin American countries. Brazil has had a progressive position, particularly Lula da Silva, not the president prior to him.
The Jair Bolsonaro,
yeah, Bolsonaro was obviously pro-Trump, right-wing, authoritarian. But, even prior to his time in prison, even historically, Lula da Silva has had a close association, and the Workers' Party, not only at the level of government, but also the workers' movement, MST, has a really close tie to South Africa, to some of our grassroots movements. What I've called nationalism, not the kind of internationalism we're talking here. So yeah, Argentina's a lone voice. Brazil, neighbors have all rallied behind the global south.
Just that question on I know this is probably not going to happen because the decision would needed to have made way before the summit started. To your understanding, Dr. Buccus, there's no way the UK takes over next year. It's practically impossible. Or can we see a decision being made in the next hour or two? The reason I'm asking is that since you've mentioned it, it's stuck in my head to think, given the spitefulness of the United States, a possibility that the United Kingdom may say, let's possibly do it. But are we in a position for that to happen, Dr. Buccus?
I think it's unlikely. And I think the UK may not want to do that. Right? It kind of fragments the cohesion of what's happening. But the nature of politics is ever changing, it's fluid. But if it were to happen, it might be a positive thing for us.
Yes.
Because there's such greater alignment between the UK and us. Starmer is already talking about some of the policy positions or some of the issues in the declaration around climate, around poverty and inequality are things that the UK, as leaders of the G20, when that does happen, would like to continue with. So I think the reality is going to be continuity and change. The declaration also talks about Ubuntu and centering African voices. I can't imagine that would hold under a Trump leadership, under Trump having the G20 in the US. But we have a far greater chance at that continuity with the UK.
Dr. Buccus, let's touch on South Africa's legacy as a G20 host, and I want to break down, obviously some of the summits, some of the working groups that have happened. In terms of, I want to go to the social summit that happened, in this week, Dr. Buccus, and just touching on what we saw there. Topics like gender-based violence came out. The social cohesion that the world wants to see. We had, of course, representatives from Oxfam coming with regards to global inequality. Global inequality, when you look at the report from Professor Joseph Stiglitz, it really highlights how massive quality is, especially from a global south perspective. My question to you, Dr. Buccus, is when you look at this, when you understand just how this inequality is being conducted at this moment. If we understand these recommendations, there really has to be an understanding, but to really help curb this inequality, as mentioned in that very same report.
Yeah, so part of this we mentioned yesterday, right? So I think really important that we focus on inequality, that the declaration has chosen to look at inequality. And like I said yesterday, really significant soil, the most unequal society in the world, in the presence of countries like Brazil, who are also, just significantly unequal. Inequality needs to be addressed, right? And that would mean that the upper end, the billionaires in society, how this inequality is taking place. The other point is that who perpetuated this inequality? It's the global north, had a role to play in it. Of course, countries themselves, with the kinds of policies they have, with the upper end accumulating the wealth. In South Africa, we've had really progressive policies around black economic empowerment, affirmative action, etc. And one of the tasks of a post-colonial society or a post-apartheid society like ours is to consolidate the middle class, and liberation movements who are in power need to play a role in that. And we've done it. Take President Ramaphosa himself. He, wasn't in politics for a long time, and that was very intentional. It was about being an industrialist, and swelling the middle class is a key factor in post-colonial society, because you want to create a new middle class. What's the problem with that? The problem with that for us is the way in which it was done. We've empowered a small elite, right? And the masses of people have not benefited. And this is a super elite, right? The bourgeoisie at the top. Of course, our middle class has increased about 5 to 7 million. The black middle class has officially overtaken the white middle class, which is significant, but also insignificant, because we are a country of a majority black population. And having 5 to 7% is, significant, but also insignificant. So inequality is growing. It's a crisis. And Steglitz and others, I think it was great to have someone like him lead it. This recognition that this is a serious crisis.
But as South Africa led from the front, because we are the most unequal workers. And I think if we are to go ahead and have a global consensus with regards to this, there has to be a clean sweep of our very front door. So is this current government, and I'm referring to it as the government of national unity, because they are now 1.5 years into administration, can this GNU really say we have the ability to deal with the inequality within our world, within the country, I beg your pardon? And of course it starts with the unemployment rate, and of course trying to find a way of getting this GDP. I mean, we keep on hearing that 3% is really the shorter period of time. Your take on that, Dr. Buccus?
Of course, several points. One is, like we're saying several times, the most unequal society. But we have an upper crust in South Africa that are just obscenely wealthy, right? And, we're middle income. And why are we middle income? Because there's such a maldistribution of wealth. Super wealth at the top and, poverty at the base. So this might not be a popular thing to say, but we need to curb the wealth at the top. Maybe CEOs or the government needs to rethink the amount of money that people at the top earn, and we need to start lessening that gap. I think people like Adam Habib and others have made this point years ago, right? That needs to happen. Youth unemployment, in all of Africa, population. So South Africa is a country of young people. 50% or slightly more are under 35. What is really frightening about that statistic is that of that cohort, of that 50%, at least 60 to 70% are on the margins. Now, when you have that kind of thing, of course it gives rise to crime, But it also creates a society that lacks social cohesion, but that could also lead to a revolution in the future.
In 2021, I know that a lot of it came down to what had happened with regards to, the imprisonment of Jacob Zuma, which of course saw the unrest we saw in 2021. But there were sectors of that unrest which really had issues with the government when it came to unemployment, when it came to the actual economic structure of our country, Dr. Buccus.
Yeah.
And I'd like to think that, I hope, from a South African perspective, that was the wake-up call. But has government woken up with regards to that?
I think there's a recognition in South Africa that this is a huge problem. If I wanted 2009, 2010, and what happened in Tunisia, you had this young man, Mohamed Bouazizi, on the streets of Tunis, on the streets of a city close by, selling his wares on the street, making $1 or $2 a day and wanting to take care of his mum and get his sister through school. What happens? The police harass him, they want, a bribe, and he says, well, I can't pay you a bribe, I'm eking out a living on the street. And then he seeks an audience with the governor. And of course, like we know, the way poor people are treated, the governor dismisses him. And what he does is, he buys petrol, he sets himself alight, and it's a really significant moment in modern history, and it gives rise to what we now know as the Arab Spring. Ben Ali leaves the country, we know it spreads to Egypt, and you have a dictator like Mubarak who's moved out. It spreads to other parts of the Middle East, and we saw that as the start to the upheaval in Syria, massive changes in Jordan. But the point is that young people stood up, right? And why did they stand up? Unemployment, people living on the margins, and young people were just simply disillusioned. The point is, what were the ingredients for this revolution? Poverty, inequality, unemployment. Now you'll probably ask, but don't we have the same in South Africa? This revolution yet? The one reason is there's something called liberation dividend. And that simply means that people give gratitude to the liberation movement for bringing us liberation. But you and I know already that that is eroding. Young people are now unhappy. The romance of the liberation is over. All of these romanticized constructions of liberation. Younger people today don't care how long you on Robben Island. They say to you, well, we want the streetlights to work.
We want
jobs.
I want to come there because, I speak a lot to the younger generation of, the ones who were born 2000 and above, and that's what they're saying right now. We need economic plans. We don't want you to tell us about the 20 years or the 27 years that have come. They don't want that anymore, Dr. Buccus.
Yeah,
they want
an
economic plan.
Yeah, that romance is over. Previously, you could say, well, we brought you liberation, look how...
Dr. Buccus, I have to stop you there because we're going to be having a live crossing. Let me go through to my colleague, Gouwa Solomon.
Thank you so much, Firaz. Welcome back. And like I said, as promised, behind the scenes, and it's hustling and bustling behind me. Stay with us as we continue the of the last day of G20. And I just happened to bump into a colleague of ours here, all the way from Russia, St. Petersburg, Katerina. I hope I get that right. A very good day to you. Is it Katerina?
Hello. Hello.
Thank you. Thanks so much for joining us. Tell us exactly which organization you represent, because of course there's various media houses here, and where exactly in Russia are you from?
I'm from St. Petersburg. I'm chef editor Russian News. It's federal newspaper, and I'm very pleasure come to G20. It's not my first G20. It's not my first time for Johannesburg, and it's always very nice organization, very nice people, very kind people, for Russian people, and thank you very much.
So you've been to the previous G20s. What do you compare those to this one here today, this weekend?
Today, many things. We make many things. We make interview with minister from South Africa, and today we tried to make interview with Germany Chancellor, but it was not possible. Very interesting work because very different position, different opinion, and it's very interesting for journalists. You can look different position.
So the G20s you've attended, which ones were they?
Why? Yes, before I was in India, I was in Brazil, and I was on BRICS in Johannesburg. It was 2 years ago, and I want to say that now stay more good. I think this, but people stay like before.
So tell us about South Africans. So you've met South Africans before, you've been to Joburg before. What would you like to tell your country when you go back about the people of South Africa?
Of course, I saw about Nelson Mandela because I was this Soweto, area Soweto, very interesting, very really life, very nice people, truly people, and you know, it's a little equivalent like Russian people because we too like smile, we like say true, be kind like you, and of course for me it's thank you very much that you invite again in your country, in this forum. It's a very pleasure for us, for Russian, and we want to invite you in Russia too. You know, we have a big forum in St. Petersburg every year with all big leaders, and leaders from South Africa sometimes come too, and I hope he will come again. And we invite you on St. Petersburg Economic Forum. It will in June, in next June, and I hope you will come.
Okay. Definitely send us that invite. You've met all the people from all the different countries here and at the various G20s. Tell us about some of the exciting conversations you've had with other delegates from around the world here at this G20.
Yes, I met many people. I met many German journalists. You know, it's very, for me, this was very interesting that they not aggressive for us, these journalists. Maybe politics different, but people not. People very kind too for Russian. They say, we hope that all will good in future and we again can come to Russia. I saw delegate from Africa, from South Africa, ministers, and I want to say that your ministers are very, how is it, not only official like robots, they very like, yes, the communication, and it's very good because some countries don't have it, and I have you very lucky country that you have it.
What do you think about the food? There's an array of breakfast, lunch and supper, entertainment here with regards to goodies to eat. What do you think about our food?
You know, I saw many foods on this summit, but you know, I don't know what is national in Africa. I thought it's this meat. You have very good meat, beef. I like your beef, amazing beef. And I hope after finish work, I will go to good African restaurant and we'll try all.
Yes, we'll definitely invite you to one. Lastly, if you wrap up, and of course a question that comes up for you when speaking to various peoples, they are asking about the Ukraine and Russia conflict. What do you say to them?
Of course, it's a difficult situation, and this situation depends not only from Russia, but how you can see on G20, on other forums, on all what you see on in world. Russia now not in isolation. She's not in isolation. She have many friends. We now have a little other vector. We have multipolarity world. All Russians hope that South Africa will join this multipolarity world. And I want to say that, of course, we hope, like all people, I think like all leaders, that it will in future more better, more comfort for all people in the world. And I hope that it will finish soon.
Thank you so much for your time. All the best.
Thank you.
Enjoy South African cuisine and go and visit the rest
Thank
of
you.
us. All the best. And that was our colleague from Russia with the various other media houses around the world that we're still about to meet. So to day 2.
With Dr. Imraan Buccus. Dr. Imraan Buccus, we were, touching on what we saw obviously in the Arab Spring that had occurred, and I mean that was a lot of it was about social unrest and the spread across the North African region. Of course, we saw it obviously moving into Syria with the brutal regime of Bashar al-Assad, but it was again social unrest. Now, obviously, there's been a lot of comment from various political analysts or former politicians who have said that we have a potential of an Arab Spring that could happen, and that for me is just something that we need to be wary of, but I do think we have a strong democracy when it comes to that.
So the difference between us and the Middle East and North Africa is that we have a really vibrant media, right? And a media that holds power to account. Media has done more than some of our security agencies and other agencies that are meant to protect us. The media has exposed more corruption, more wrongdoing than the people would expect to be doing it. So our levels of investigative journalism generally I think are really high. We also have civil society, despite our critique of civil society. So we have those two things that the Middle East and North Africa did not have.
Yes.
We have the irony in some parts of North Africa of what they call gongos, government NGOs. Of course, a contradiction in terms.
Yes.
But about the social uprising, the revolution, and like I was saying earlier, what holds us back, what protects us is this idea of liberation dividend, giving gratitude to the liberation movement for bringing us liberation. But that's wearing out. The romance is wearing out. Movements tend to do what we call mobilize liberation. So when you complain about the lights and the potholes, they say, but do you recall how we brought liberation? Right? So they use that as something to justify.
You mentioned it, the romance. The love is no more there. They want political parties, and it opens up these so-called liberal or neoliberal parties to go ahead and say, well, we have an option for you. Let's take a simplistic way, right? You've got, of course, the local government elections that are happening next year, and you've got this rhetoric from Hilaal that is coming that we are the savior of Johannesburg, and I want to take Johannesburg because, of course, this is probably the most important metro that's going to be being contested within South Africa. So, is there an understanding from liberation movements, and I'm just talking about the ANC, I'm talking about liberation movements across the continent, that the citizen is looking at you and saying, no, that love isn't there anymore. If you're not catching a wake-up, then we will move to parties who probably have different ideologies and who could potentially or not potentially deliver on the service delivery that us as the citizens want.
No, absolutely. When we think about the last election, there was a whole concern about the DA. In the midst of a genocide, will people vote DA?
Yes,
because we already know the DA's position on a whole range of things, the individuals and organizations that fund the DA. But when the elections occurred, we still saw support for the DA, and people were wondering, how on earth can this happen?
I want to come there, Dr. Buccus. Yeah. Before Solomon Dr even became the communications minister, I'd asked him the question, so do you feel that the DA is amongst the Muslim community? And his answer was, I'm going to quote verbatim here, well, do you know most of our vote came from Muslim communities in Cape Town? I was like taken aback, but I mean, there you go. I mean, they had the early statistics as a party. So, I mean, to your point, I mean, what we thought actually ended up happening.
Yeah, because one homogenize the Muslim community. We think this Muslim community is one monolith. It's not, right? It's an extremely diverse community. You might have wealthy Muslims who make a decision to vote in a particular way, or middle class Muslims. And then you might have really poor working class Muslims in parts of Durban and parts of the Western Cape on the flats who would make their decision to vote. And I'm not just saying this, it's empirical, that people make electoral decisions.
Dr. Buccus, we're going to be getting a guest, so we're going to be taking a quick break, and we'll welcome our next guest on. Do stay tuned to Mzansi Welcomes the World. Welcome back to Mzansi Welcomes the World, and joining me now I'd like to welcome William Baloyi, who is the Deputy Government Spokesperson. Tate Baloyi, thank you so much for joining us.
No, thank you very much, and thanks for having us as Hilaal TV. We're quite happy and appreciative of the opportunity you're giving us.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. Mr. Baloyi, were you taken up surprised at the early declaration that was taken? Because I must confess, and I've been speaking to, whether it's your colleague Vincent Makwenya, whether it's, Minister of Communications Solly Malatsi, and I told them the same, thing, that this was quite unprecedented for a declaration within the G20 Leaders Summit.
I might not join in to say we were surprised. Safe to summarize it the way you have put it, to say it's unprecedented, but to me, it's a sign, a benefit of the hard work that we put since December 2024, when we took it over from Brazil. Through his leadership, President Matamela, we have been hard at work to make sure that what we have presented as our theme is supported by the evidence and the facts. So that hard work paid. But when you say it's unprecedented, because you remind me of when Indonesia was hosting. They couldn't even agree on the final text of the declaration. It had to proceed to India. So the way we dealt with it here, I think we represented the aspirations, 1, 2 of the global south, but 3 of the economically depressed countries. And that's how it found expression and resonance with the leaders here.
I've read the declaration and I've seen commitments that are coming from the global north. There's 2 countries I want to mention because they hold permanent Security Council and veto powers within the UN, within that. United Kingdom and France. And I've always maintained that they need to play a major part in helping the global south. From discussions amongst your colleagues, from your understanding, are you confident declarations, these pledges, are going to come from 2 major countries like the UK and France?
Maybe let me indicate something that probably might have not found resonance expression at the highest level. that our relations with EU, European Union, when it comes to issues of energy renewal, renewable energy and so forth, we are on par. Hence, the European Union has invested a lot of resources in terms of money to supporting the projects of South Africa on matters of energy.
Rare earth minerals. I mean, I see there's a deal that was signed on Friday with Ursula von der Leyen and President Ramaphosa. How important is that in terms of the trade deals which the European Union and South Africa? I mean, this was long discussed already back in January. So that deal, the significance of it.
That is quite important for us in the sense that, one, as we speak, most of the industries that are part of our Johannesburg Stock Exchange must check they are mostly European Unions, so European based. So what we are doing is to further amplify that practicality of those companies doing business in South Africa. And there is an exchange program that continues to see what further can we do to make sure that our economies, they speak to each other, but also South Africa is pushing the issue of beneficiation to say on behalf of the African continent, we have realized that we are well endowed with minerals, but however, that doesn't show in terms of the improvement of the lives in those. So, and today as we speak, on the very last day, there is a plenary. One of the critical issues that is being looked at, apart from artificial intelligence and decent work, is the issue of the just and fair critical minerals distribution. That's quite important.
How do we balance, Mr. Baloyi, between this deal over here, that whichever multinational comes, or how the European deals with it, that where the minerals are coming from, which is going to come from South Africa or Africa, that the governments of those countries can make the calls or make the decisions which will benefit the citizens, because generally we have multinationals coming in and they rule the roost with these decisions. So can we have a supposed consensus that governments must act in the interest of its own people?
Exactly, and that is what we call the beneficiation. Instead of them being just mined and shipped away, let us start a process of beneficiation where it will ultimately create jobs, provides a tax base for those countries, and then improves their lives, create jobs for the regions that are involved. And that is what South Africa we are championing. If you remember, we have also placed at the center the issue of debt relief, because if you look at most financial institutions, they are owed by African countries and the global south, some of those countries. But when they have to repay those debts, the interest is quite high. And as South Africa, we are saying, let there be equality in terms of the interest of payment, back payment, so that the people on the ground can benefit from that.
Mr. Baloyi, I want to touch on the United States of America. I saw it did not go Trump's way. Simple. Madli Makanya, in his piece in the City Press, said that President Ramaphosa handled himself with distinction and was not bullied by Donald Trump. I know this has been a discussion that has dominated this entire week.
Yeah.
Did the US make a mistake in the way it handled itself in this over here? Because even till Thursday, President Ramaphosa was saying we're still open to the United States coming and taking the baton from South Africa.
I think there is something that I need to explain. That our hosting of the G20, it's not a South African G20. We are talking about the world. So anything that is related to the G20 represent the aspirations of the world. So South Africa, we hosted it because of the confidence that we have. Now, coming to the issue of the US. Any response is not directed specifically at South Africa. It's directed at the world. Then it's up to the world to decide at the level of
wait,
G20.
Mr. Buller, I have to catch because Donald Trump has been attacking South Africa this entire year. It started with AfriForum going to Washington, D.C., making these false claims.
Not AfriForum. It started 2016. There was another party.
Yes,
that
no,
went
I
in
remember.
2016,
I remember.
yeah.
Now, but the thing is that even Donald Trump this week said there are bad things happening in South Africa. So for me, that already indicated that he was attacking South Africa. I know you said the world. It's an attack on the world. Call it for what it is, Mr. Buller.
Yeah,
he actually went ahead and attacked South Africa.
Coming to South Africa, firstly, we have made it very clear to America that they are ill-informed. Let me not say America. Let me say the
US
current
government, yes,
administration.
right, yeah.
They are with the South African situation. But what is disappointing is that they get that information from South African entities, which I might not mention in name, which means that then it goes a little bit to the past where we come from. But however, let me dwell into it. Let me not dwell into that. No lesser person than the Secretary General of the United Nations, Mr. Guterres, who was here in this same thing. He said he doesn't see any those signs of genocide. So we thought we are not going to entertain that. But secondly, remember, you don't get into an you don't understand. Thirdly, America has massive intelligence communities and resources. They even have an embassy here. Why didn't they get that? That there is genocide here. So that's why we thought that because it's not true, we'll make it official to the American administration. But how they interpret it, we leave it to them. Like, for example, the countries that are here, more than 40.
Yes.
They don't subscribe to what that leader, it's seen South Africa through. But they completed a very successful G20 summit. They were not part, not because they were not invited. They reached out to President Ramaphosa to say we want to be part of the closing ceremony. What does that say? That says they recognize that South Africa is hosting the G20 Africa. That's why they send us even the list of the names of the people that have to be accredited. We don't have a problem with that. However, the 2 days summit is a leaders summit. So it's only at the level of leaders. But the people that they were requesting to come, they are not leaders. Hence, we couldn't undermine the authority, the stature of the G20 leaders
leadership.
And
that's of course the mandate that has been of course set out with regards to this 1 minute or actually 45 seconds, Mr. Poloi. You said successful. Is that how we define South Africa's G20 presidency for this year?
I think we achieved more than what we thought. As you did in your opening thing, the mere fact that the declaration was unanimously adopted on the very first day. It shows the success, the credibility, but the leadership that we have provided.
William Poloi, absolute pleasure having you on. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much, and thank you for informing the those that follow the platform because you provide most needed information. Thank you very much.
Absolute pleasure. That's William Poloi, Deputy Government Spokesperson of the Republic of South Africa. Do stay tuned. We'll have more for you after this break.
Thanks to Faraz in our studio at the media warehouse, I would say G20, and some these ministers just passing. I asked the Minister of Finance that behind the scenes is what is happening, and we're trying to catch various stakeholders. And talking about G20 and its legacy is a gentleman that I've also managed to grab as well, Mr. Kingsley, and he'll tell us more about that. Good day to you, Kingsley, and thank you so much for joining us here on Hilaal TV. Please tell us your designation and the organization you represent, and a little bit more about that as well, what it means to our viewers.
Thank you. My name is Kingsley. I'm the Mission Director for Sustainability Bridge. Our project is G20 Legacy Knowledge Initiative. And what it means really is that there's been over 1,300 meetings that have taken place throughout the whole year, right? We've had what we call engagement groups, B20, Y20, C20, Women 20, and many other 20s around. Those are called engagement groups. So what is happening is we're going to take all this information and put it in a system where people can get access to online, and that's our work, is to make sure we harvest this information, make it also palatable for people to be able to understand what does a policy around climate mean for us as South Africans. So what happens in the G20 is that it's government to government. So government officials have worked from different G20 countries, have worked together for the whole year to work on policies that affect everyone else, right? Could be on gender. That they worked on was really on positive masculinity as a way of dealing with gender-based violence, right? So that was led by Department of Women. So other countries came on work and say, what is positive masculinity, and how do we deal with it, and how do we make sure it's one of the things that we drive as government, right? So that information is important for people, for women who stood for a few days ago, marched across our country to say there needs to be an end to femicide and all that. So the government is doing something. What has been happening here in the last 2 days are the leaders who then come, the politicians who are political leaders who come together and sign what have done. So there's a lot of work that has been worked on this year. What happens now is implementation, right? And with that implementation, the Knowledge Hub will be able to create information for people to come and say, these are the implementation that will need to take place. And it goes on to us as individuals to come and say, how do we implement some of these policies? Not just the government. Government's role is to write policies. Our work, NGOs, incubators, our work is to make sure we implement some of these things within our space. So in South Africa, we always talk of Gouwa Solomon, right? Gouwa Solomon belongs in a community, right? There's a church around here. There are different communities that support her. Our work is available for the NGOs that support her. Stephen, who runs his computer hub or a software business, right, wants to know what are the policies that come out of, especially for digital economy, what are those policies that have been agreed to that open South Africa to the global market, or within the G20, just within Africa. What are those policies? What are the new trade commitments that have existed? What are the finance or projects that have been that are out there? For instance, we've got the UAE that announced 1 billion worth of infrastructure funding for infrastructure around AI. So people now need to know that there are countries that have come to South Africa that have made commitments to South Africa and Africa to come and say, because of this G20, we want to support you. It's not now the government who needs to now go and people come and say, the government must give me money. No, it's for us to come and say, oh, the UAE is doing this. How do I reach out to the embassy of the UAE to request for some of this, to submit an application for some of this? Yes, and how do I do that effectively?
Yeah, so that actually answers a question that came from our viewers, which I posed to Minister Lamola yesterday, is that what happens after G20? What happens to South Africans after G20? And that's basically, he gave a very general answer, but this is basically the nitty-gritties of the answer to that. Rural areas, what happens to jobs after that? Also, we attended as a mostly Muslim broadcaster the H20. You know, do people even know what